maybe. And also I like to upload the recorded document of each program on YouTube. So then you can share the link with all your zillions of fans and family members later on if they couldn't be with us today. Anne, do you have a question? Do you want to type it in the chat? Because I can't hear you.
I know. If everybody could mute themselves when they're not talking, the sound quality will be better.
The volume was so low I couldn't hear what you asked.
I just said that everybody should mute themselves unless they're talking, because then the sound quality of whoever's talking will be better.
So thank you, Anne. So I'm going to be documenting by recording, and we'll be going in the order in which your names appeared in the Facebook event page. So if there's any question about that, please, just refer to the Facebook event page. We have switched up a couple of people because I know, Robin, you need to leave early, and just found out that Steven Schneider sends his regrets but is not able to join us today. Yes, just a few things. I need to ask if somebody could test the chat function just to make sure that folks can send private messages to each other, because that's something I would have to control. So I just want to ask somebody to test that.
It's working.
Okay, great, great. Oh, and I see, Anne, why I wasn't able to hear you. My own volume control was down low. Okay, I was a little worried about that. Oh, wow, so many messages in the chat already, which is a great way to create community. And I encourage folks to share comments with each other, or give hurrahs, or, write down your favorite quotes or things that were memorable that you heard said tonight. And then I can share the chat with you via email later on. What was I just, oh yes, each poet will be asked to recite 2 poems. And one of them, the first one, I'd prefer it if it was the water poem, something relating to the ocean, the Gulf Coast, or a relationship to water that you'd like to speak of. And at this point, I want to also invite folks to know that when others are reading, it's really wonderful to have. Thank you, Wendy. It's wonderful for folks to just go ahead and mute their mics so that we can really lean into the poems being presented. However, I'm a very big fan of unmuting once the poet has finished reading so that they can hear our applause and shout outs and snaps. This has the energy of a real in-person reading. Donna, I'd like for you in a moment to talk a little bit about the tie-in with the global climate strike. If you could do that, I'm so happy that you're here. So every month when I think of a different theme, a theme for the month, which starts with the word dando. Dando is Spanish for giving. So in November, I launched the series with Dando Gracias, giving thanks. In December, it was Dando Paz, giving peace. In January, it was Dando Oportunidad, giving opportunity, because I felt that we were turning a page, starting a new chapter, maybe even a whole new book with the inauguration and maybe, a change of the climate in our country. And this month it's Dando Agua, because I had a conversation with my good friend Donna Hoffman, who is an environmental advocate and has been working on many environmental issues for decades. And Donna, could you speak to what the global climate strike or summit is, and the tie-in with water, what's happening in the Gulf Coast now?
Thanks, Tammy. I love this Dando Agua. Thank you for doing this, and all the poets coming to address that, and to see Sue Prebos, who's also a major environmental activist on the Gulf. So there's some powerful coalitions of people who've come together. They are the Permian Gulf Coast Coalition and the Gulf South for a Green New Deal. And these are people all the way from Mexico, the border of Mexico and Texas, all the way to Florida, from all those South states, and from New Mexico as well, the Permian Basin. is the largest region in the United States for in the world. It's the most concentrated emissions of methane, which causes climate change. And they're really rushing to get the last bits of oil to be made into plastic on the Gulf Coast, and also to be shipped on huge ships to China. So there's a lot of people who are trying to say, no, don't do that. And so they're coming together powerfully to try to reverse that and to protect the waters of the Gulf. And so this past week, there were a lot of actions building up. On Friday was the global climate strike. That's part of a global Fridays for Future that Greta kind of kicked off. Fridays for Future, but young people all over the planet and have been in the lead on that. So there's a global climate strike. And in Texas, from all the way from the lower Rio Grande Valley, with the fights by Becca Hinojosa and Juan Mancias to stop an LNG, liquefied natural gas there, and all the way up to the coastal bend where I'm from, Corpus Christi, and the efforts to stop the export terminals there and the plastics plant there. And then the Brazoria County up near Galveston, south of Galveston, they're trying to stop the export terminals there, and on the border with Louisiana, all the way to Plaquemines and St. James Parish and over to Florida. So we've had a lot of action this past week on Monday and on Thursday to stop desalination plants that the industry wants. It's not for people. And people came out, and from every different walk of life, in particular the most impacted, which were the African American people in Hillcrest in Corpus Christi. They wanted to put that plant right there. So everyone came out and protested that and made comments. So then there was also at Liberty Mutual in Plano, there was a big action. Yolanda Bluehorse and Robin Schneider and Lisa Fithian all went there to the policyholders and said, stop ensuring climate chaos stop ensuring fossil fuel projects. So that happened this week. And then last night was Youth Voices, a bunch of young people from middle school and high school reading their letters about climate change to the legislators, 3 legislators, Donna Howard and Aaron Zwiener, and a representative of Lloyd Doggett. And then there was Pearlie Gates had a concert with a lot of Bill Oliver and other musicians. So this night, Dando Agua is the culmination and the big after party of a whole big week of actions. And I thank Tammy for bringing that political consciousness into it.
Thank you, Donna. And of course, as a poet, writer myself, I think it's there's a place for our work, and the work we do is about celebrating, emoting, sharing, and exercising conviviality around the themes that are important to us. And tonight it's on water. So Donna, do you want to go ahead and mute yourself? And then we'll have you back intermittently if you like. Thank you. Our first writer, poet, is also scholar and editor. And Katie, you're gonna be up in just a moment. So I wanna introduce you as the editor of this anthology that we're really celebrating. I know it was released officially a few months ago, maybe was it November or October of last year? Yeah, October 2020. And because of the pandemic and the conditions of folks having to be at home and not really getting out and about, the book is getting kind of a little bit of a late start in being released widely to the public. And I'm very happy to be able to help boost the awareness about this book, which is titled Odes and Elegies, Eco Poetry from the Texas Gulf Coast. And Katie Hirth is the editor, and I will allow you some time to talk about the project. And if you'd like to share 2 poems, that'd be wonderful. Thank you, Katie.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Tammy, for giving us this space to talk a little bit about Odes and Elegies. And of course, we have some wonderful poets from the book here this evening. So I'll talk a bit about the book before I jump into reading some of my poems. So I don't have any poems in the book because I was editing the collection, but putting together the anthology, I did this in conjunction with the folks at the Center for History and Culture of the Upper Gulf Coast and Southeast Texas at Lamar University. So this book was a team effort, and it's really was made possible thanks to a grant from those folks. So I always want to thank the people who helped make this possible. So that's Dr. Brendan Gillis and Dr. Judy Lindsley. And also my team at Lamar University Literary Press, who helped put this book together as well. Daniel Valdez, my intern for part of this project, Teresa Enner, and Jerry Craven. So tonight we're going to be hearing from a few of the readers from the book. Some of my favorite poets ever that I had the absolute honor of including in this anthology: Robin Davidson, Loretta Diane Walker, Wendy Barker, Maria Miranda Maloney, and Florence Musgrove will be reading with us tonight. So the book is titled Odes and Elegies, Eco-Poetry from the Texas Gulf Coast. And I think that the title kind of encompasses the tension of the poetry in the book, because it's, we're celebrating the beauty of the Gulf Coast in odes. So odes are poems that celebrate the beauty or, the joy of a place. And certainly the Gulf Coast is a place of joy and wildness and beauty. But it's also elegies because, it's really on the front lines of climate change and our climate crisis. It's where the oil industry is really concentrated, in the upper Gulf Coast, in the Southeast Texas, where I live and teach. The nation's largest oil refinery is right square in Port Arthur. It's also on the front lines of climate disasters, of hurricanes and floods and man-made oil spills. So we feel the effects of these we think of discussions of climate change sometimes as political discussions, but they're political discussions that have very real ramifications on people's everyday lives, and in particular on the working class and on people of color. So there's this disproportionate impact of climate issues. It's no coincidence that Port Arthur is, a community of predominantly African Americans, and that's where the oil refinery is. That's the land that is polluted by the oil industry, and then the money leaves the town. So, that's no coincidence. So this book speaks to issues of climate justice, in addition to celebrating the beauty of the landscape, exploring the effects of man on the landscape, and also bearing witness to the disasters such as hurricanes, which seem to get stronger every single year. I've lived in Southeast Texas for 4 years now, and I moved to the area 2 weeks before Hurricane Harvey. So that was me being baptized into what it means to be a Southeast Texan, and quite a crash course very quickly. So that's kind of what Odes and Elegies is. There's poems in this book from people from all walks of life, from a variety of different backgrounds, from college professors to students, to even I have a poem from a child, because children are the ones who are going to be inheriting this world that we leave behind. So it's an expansive anthology, and it has people from the Gulf Coast and beyond, anyone who has been impacted and who's written and thought about the Gulf Coast contributed. And it's just been a real pleasure and an honor to work on this book. And I hope that it sparks conversations about climate change and climate justice that's happening in our backyards here in Texas. So that being said, I do have some poems to share, but they're not climate, or they're climate related, and certainly they're water related, but they're not in the anthology. So I'll share a couple of poems that I've worked on recently from an ecofeminist perspective. And I've been writing these poems as a collaborative project with Corinne McCormick Whittemore, who's also here tonight. She's an artist, and so we kind of go back and forth inspiring one another. So I'll share her images that inspired these poems. If I can do that here, let's see. Here. I've got too many screens open. That's the story of our lives, isn't it? Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, so this is an image, you know, I'm originally from the Rio Grande Valley, the lower Rio Grande Valley in deep South Texas. And so that's also where Corin's art is, Corin is from, and her art speaks to the Rio Grande Valley and the borderlands. So this is her image, and the poem that I wrote in response to this image is called Irrigation Lullaby for Donna, Texas. Which I think kind of explores and looks at some of the issues that I talked about that impact the upper Gulf Coast in terms of the disproportionate effects of climate change that's also happening in the Rio Grande Valley, as this poem will hopefully illustrate. So Irrigation Lullaby for Donna, Texas. Cattle dip their tongues into my surface, take mouthfuls of me down their dusty throats. On a summer morning in El Valle, I am a mother suckling this landscape. The groves of grapefruit off into the distance thrive because of me. These cimbras need my lullaby of water to survive. The nascent suburbs and the ancient towns, I birthed them too and nourished them through drought. This isn't magic, but a river flowing through canals like veins, resacas carved into curves. Beneath the placid surface, I keep my secrets as a mother must. Alligator gar patrol for shad. A shoal of carp make ripples as they pass. My rushes tuck away a largemouth bass that harbors PCBs within its flesh. My currents dredge up history and flotsam. Colonias drink in carcinogens that flow down from the valley, the land of milk and honey. I hold this landscape to my chest of clouds and leak pollutants from my heavy breasts and weep a cocktail full of chemicals and feed this landscape everything I am. So this next poem is called Agua, and it's a sonnet. She is the reason for the valley's magic. She holds the fields of cotton to her chest, nourishes the seedlings through the tragic months of drought, bathes them in a crest of her. The sprinklers leak her essence, palm trees suckle from the soil. She is the rustle of fronds in April and the urgent psalm of kiskadees. Come fall, she is the rumble in the distance as her rain clouds swell with the monsoons of milk that soon will sluice into the citrus trees and bring the smell of grapefruit flesh to life. You suck her juice, a ruby river sticky on your chin. The Rio Grande dribbles down your chin. Thank you.
What beautiful images. I'm so glad your friend is the photographer here, did you say?
Yes, yes, Corin is here, yes.
Oh, can we see you? What is the name, Katie?
Corin Whittemore. She's
oh,
here.
Corin. Thank you, Corin. There you are. You're waving now. I see you. So wonderful. Great work. And those pieces, so poignant. And we'll have to get access to them, even though they're not in the anthology. I would love to hear how folks can reread those at some point. And if they're if they're online, Katie, do you mind putting the URL in the chat if there's a way to?
Well, so these ones are unpublished, but Corin and I and another poet, Julia de Corpus, have a book coming out later this year of our artistic collaborations in English and Spanish. So those will be coming out from SFA University Press, and the book is called Borderlands Mujeres.
Oh,
I'll put a link to that.
Great, great, great. Thank you so much. Welcome, Josh. Glad you're here. Yes. Next up is Robin Davidson, who's from what I read online last night, based in Houston, Texas, and has been a long time professor at one of the universities. If you could share a little bit about that history or background by way of bioing yourself, that would be great, Robin, because I don't like to read the bios because I'd rather hear the poet themselves speak about whatever is on your heart and mind to share about yourself by way of introducing who you are to others here. Thank you.
Okay.
Robin Davidson, please welcome her to the mic.
Thank you, Tammy and Kate.
Woo.
Also, I appreciate both of you, all of you being here. So I've lived in Houston for 55 years. I'm only 45. Just kidding. But anyhow, I've been here a long time and I love my city, and I've taught for University of Houston downtown for about 20 something years. I'm retired from there now and I still teach part-time. I was lucky enough to serve as the second poet laureate for the city under Mayor Parker and also now under Mayor Turner. And I admire both of those mayors enormously. So anyway, I'm a really lucky poet in a great city. And I also love San Antonio. So, and I saw Lupe is from San Antonio, and there may be others here. And Austin is great. Texas can be a great place. I would like to see new leadership, but we'll discuss that later. I, like you, Tammy, was thrilled at the results of the inauguration, the national inauguration. So I'm going to read the two poems from the anthology, and Katie's anthology is just so beautiful. You've done a beautiful job. I've also edited an anthology in the past, and it is no small triumph. So the first poem is called Tax Day Flood, Houston, 2016. I want to say one thing about it, and that is there's an allusion at the end, which you may or may not, I mean, it may or may not be successful, but it is to Amiri Baraka's poem, Somebody Blew Up America. If you don't know that poem, you should listen to him. There's a video of his performance of that poem, and it's an amazing poem. And if you know the poem, you know at the end he's asking who blew up America, who did many things in American political history. And he was New Jersey Poet Laureate at the time that poem was written, and he was asked to leave the position after he published it, which he refused to do. Tax Day Flood, Houston, 2016. Behind a locked door aboard Norwegian Cruise Line's newest ship, the Haven, a ship within a ship. It's an epigraph from New York Times, April 24th, 2016. Silt is accumulation, rock worn away by water, a soup of stone dust and river. Photographs, dried roses, lilies, a christening gown, a box of old keys, granular memory alive in us, the ruins we carry, live by. April 16th, the city of Houston, the Chronicle writes, was inundated with deadly flooding, choked major arteries, Buffalo Bayou, White Oak Bayou, fast-moving waters, drownings. Silt is accumulation. Flood is sudden, visceral like fear or rage, love or grief, a surging tide we must bob above, swim out from. In the Old Testament, a man is warned, chosen, and told to choose. Horses, snakes, doves, creature after creature in pairs, his own family saved, afloat on a great ark. Not like the drowning horses pulled from water, the streets teeming with sailing cars, signposts, snakes, the families, their upturned refrigerators filled with children, lifeboats. Our city is a history of storm, oil and water, rising wind, where houses lie down like felled trees, where people trapped, no ark, no oars, huddle, wait. April 24. In privilege, says the Times, not all are in the same boat. A caste system, always the intention to make the haven obscure, in the face of the masses. Days after floodwaters recede, we see curbside ruins, sheetrock, carpets, chairs, then mattresses, a child's dresser, a briefcase, nothing new in this debris of nameless households. Who chooses who floats or sinks? Who? Whose plan presides? Who pays? Who? Silt is accumulation, flood is sudden. Be watchful, you who build a haven. Be watchful for the surging tide, the one you can't dam in. Thanks. Let me have some water.
Wow.
Man, when I read that article, I was furious. I was so angry. Anyway, so thanks for letting me read that poem. It's never been published anywhere else, and I probably will not include it in any books, but it was important to be able to feel that and write it. The second poem, I want to try my hand at sharing an image, and I don't know if I'll do it well. But there is a reference in this poem to a painting by Texas visual artist Billy Hassel. He's a magnificent guy and painter, both human and painter. And his painting is called Monarch Butterflies Over the Rio Grande. I have an image that doesn't do any justice to the painting itself, but let's see, maybe you can see it. Can you see that okay? Okay. Excuse me. Migrations. Lantana and salvia, delphinium, thistle, and heather move in the still heat of late August. A garden grows outside our window, waits for the transient beauty of monarchs, the ruby-throated hummingbird. In Billy Hassel's Monarch Butterflies Over the Rio Grande, hundreds of wings, the color of dawn or sunset, move across the sky, a kaleidoscope of light that pours over sheer-walled canyons, volcanic rock. The cavernous stretch of river becomes a permeable border which is no border, but the freedom of flight that beauty makes, turning gray rock, gray water to orange light. Hummingbirds travel thousands of miles for food, warmth, males first, then the females and their young. Whole families escaping the violence, the poverty of weather. And we wait for them, our feeders hung in the jasmine's shade. Men and women, their children, travel miles, months, seeking asylum. They wait in lines or cages in El Paso, Clint, McAllen. They lose their luggage, their language, the children they carry. No milk, no blankets, no soap, no songs. We hold our children close, watch flight out the window at a distance in a garden. Wingless, they who flee must swim the river. Wingless, they who flee must cross the desert. O God of many names, see their flight, reach into the waters, the sand, lift and hold them in the cleft of the rock. Thank you.
Wow, so moving. I love your reading of that as well. Your voice just
Thank you, Tammy.
took its time with that. Yes, yes. Plenty of comments and feedback in the chat for you there, Robin. Enjoy at your leisure. Uh, Thank you again. Next up, I want to introduce Loretta Diane Walker, who is speaking to us from her couch in Odessa, Texas. Did you see any snow in Odessa the other night, Loretta? How was that? How's the weather up there, out west?
It just depends on the time of the day, and I'm serious. Last weekend, I'm thinking it was last weekend, we had an earthquake Friday night, Saturday between 3:30 and 4:30. We had a hailstorm, rainstorm, and a dust storm between 3:30 and 4. So that's, I mean, it sounds like something wild, but you just never know what we get here. But we haven't seen snow.
I've heard of the 24-hour news cycle. I think you have on the 24-hour weather cycle, you see it all, huh?
Yes, yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, the work that you're doing as a writer, aside from the poetry, and as a poet also? Just whatever you'd like to share by way of introducing yourself.
I am an elementary music teacher. That's my day job. And I write poetry the remainder of the time. I am working on a collection now entitled Darkness Begins, Morning Begins When Darkness is at its full bloom. This collection is about my third bout with cancer. I'm currently, I'm getting stronger, but I'm a two-time breast cancer survivor, and I'm in treatment for the third time. So I'm working on a collection about that and finding out about having cancer during the pandemic. So that collection will come out. And hopefully my prayer is that I'll never write about having cancer again. I don't want to write any more poems about it. It's been healing, but so that's what I've been working on. And then I've started working on some lighter pieces, some fun pieces, just for my sanity, for the sake of my sanity. So not much else. So I'm very fortunate. Well, I'm really fortunate to be in Odes with so many wonderful poets. It's such an honor. Katie did such an excellent job with this, and I'm just honored and proud to be a part of this collection. So I think that's about all there is to say about me right now. And I'm going to read the poem that I have in this collection. It is called The First Juneteenth. Juneteenth, short for June 19th, marks the day when federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas in 1865 to take control of the state and ensure that all enslaved people be freed. The troops' arrival came a full 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. After hearing they were free, some former slaves tossed their ragged garments into the creeks and rivers. Oh, to eavesdrop on gossiping Gar, overshadowed by cotton. Tossing those rags into the Gulf of Mexico, they paced the banks, witnessed their past sink into the swamp of the unknown. Did anyone salvage a cuff, a pocket, a yoke? Even the unsolved cradles a period somewhere in its mystery. Maybe this is freedom, to shoulder the pain of others, to gather remnants together. Maybe freedom is a river each of us can step into daily, rid ourselves of what no longer fits. Maybe water is to sacrifice what silence is to dignity, so the vulnerable walk without shame.
Thank you for that. I just want
Woo!
to say real quick, Loretta, that there's a local luminary. Greg, can you remind me of her name? Uh, Greg Johnson. She's a local luminary and advocate in Fort Worth who is rallying to have Juneteenth be a national holiday. Is that correct, Greg? If you're here, correct me on that.
That is, and I'm looking at her face, and I'm having a moment. Uh,
Opal Lee.
Opal Lee, that's
Opal
correct.
Lee. Opal Lee is she in her 90s?
Opal Lee is probably closer to 100 than she is. She's a centenarian almost. Yeah,
Okay. But
or
yeah,
centenarian, I guess you call it.
yeah. So Loretta, she's a mover and shaker, and she's trying. Is that a national holiday? Is that what she's trying to get? Because I know she's
She
got.
is trying to make it a national holiday, from what I
Mhm.
understand. Yeah, she's something else, a whirling dervish.
Thank you for that piece, Loretta. What's your next one?
This next one is a part of a trilogy. And I told you I was trying to write something lighter just for my sanity. I love superheroes. I really do. And I have a trilogy of why I'm jealous of. And this is one of them, why I'm jealous of Aquaman. And this is in response to the first time that I visited the Atlantic. So this is why I'm jealous of Aquaman. Sleep is a con artist, convinces us as we fall. How tainted this belief. Offer it a bribe when eyelids stop fluttering with conviction. See how long you stay awake. War against it. Wage war against it. Buck your eyes until the skin is taut as wire. Sleep sieges us, magnate or pauper, drags us into a place where the only escape is through the window of dreams. I dream I walk a tightrope across an evening sky, roaring with orange flames. I dream I am a mermaid in Atlantis with Aquaman, not because of his superhuman strength, not because of the arcane power glow in his eyes, not because he wields the trident of Poseidon, but he can visit the museums of oceans, meander through galleries of coral, view the pillared coral with its hard fingers, colonies of staghorn coral with their stony antlers, the black coral's tamy spines. I, a desert dweller, plunge to the depths of love when I first behold the Atlantic's mammoth mouth, smells its briny breath, feel its playful spray. I want its cold, beautiful heart to love me back. Beauty this big is incapable of loving mere mortals. An embrace can crush bones. And sleep, that corn artist releases me into the cold of dawn as the wind plays a naked mulberry like a violin. Thank you.
Oh, that last line. Wow. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So great to hear you for the first time.
Thank
um, Next up, we have Miranda Maloney. And as I was able to find, you're based in Huntsville, Texas. Correct me if I'm wrong. And
Yes, I am. Thank you. I am. I am originally from El Paso, Texas, and I moved to Huntsville 6 years ago, and Harvey was actually my first hurricane, and it was interesting, the relationship of coming from the desert and always praying for water or yearning for water, and then suddenly there's so much water out here. My relationship with water changed to a point where I was doing Harvey, my house got flooded, and I was I was taking out water with buckets and so that relationship suddenly, that love of water became a little bit of more of a fear until I got used to it. And then I got used to it. So it's been an interesting change for me. I've always loved the ocean. I've written various poems about the environment, the devastation that takes place when when there's neighborhoods sprout and the animals are left to die or to seek shelter elsewhere. So and that I've seen this back home in the Chihuahuan Desert, and how progress has really devastated our land. And so I want to read a poem about that. And I'm going to share the poem that I wrote for oats and allergies, and both of them are, when it comes to environment, whether you are in the Gulf or in the desert, environmental changes and any type of man-made change really affects our land. My brother is a environmental engineer, and he's studying the arroyos and how building has affected the plants, the heat has affected the water source, the animals, and so on and so forth. So the first poem that I'm going to share is a poem that I wrote about him, and it is related to water for what he does. And this is very appropriate since we're talking about how water gives. And this one is called In the Name of Progress. 1. What is left are dunes, arranged by wind, and occasional hawks cry, cleaving gossamer skies, famished for holy flesh. When the animals left, their names, couch, spade foot, crevice spiny, astic rail, years disappeared into a weathered unknown. 2. My brother fills a bucket with water every night, sets it on the other side of the rock wall that surrounds his property. He waits for the roadrunners, coyote and its babes. At night, he listens to thirsty tongues lapping up water their bodies ache to feel. 3. We wouldn't stop the cord of roads, then houses, then knots of legs and feet moving farther, roaming everywhere, nothing sleeping in the parched land. 4. What kind of game is this? Insatiable hunger sweeping land in the name of progress, coaxing infinity into our backyards, always wanting something else, even as the green and blue bleeds out. Thank you. Now, this is a poem that was, the next poem that I'm going to read is the one that was published by Lamar Press. Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much. And this is called Inventory. One of the things that I love to do, and I always go for walks, and I take my camera and I usually just document and what I find. And this is several months ago, I was out in the Gulf Coast, the Gulf. I went because I needed to, I had one of my aunts passed away from COVID, and I have found out that when I grieve, I need solitude. I need either the desert or I need the ocean, but I need to grieve. And that is the only thing that gives me that space that I need. Anyway, so I was out there and I was taking a walk along several streets and areas. And so I made an inventory of what I found. Okay. Rose-colored couch, slipping off sand dune. Broken beer bottles parrot a puzzle in progress. 2 yards away, pink Barbie car missing from wheel. Absent dowel pens, styrofoam cup. Hook to a yucca's needle. Red tail hawk over area. 3x4, 5-inch deep. Jagged edge concrete slab. Fuck you in black Sharpie pen. Core spilling on snakeweed. Ticking in wind. Other trash, a bottomless chair. Thank you.
What a list. Oh my gosh. It made me think of Pablo Neruda seeing a part of I guess a ship had wrecked, and a floating door came up on shore, and he made a desk out of it. Thank you so much, Maria Miranda. And I just, look forward to hearing more of your work. And yeah, stick around. And we're moving on next to, oh yeah, Ann Fisher-Worth says, I love list poems. I do too. Lawrence Musgrove, based in San Angelo, Texas, is up next. And we have nothing but ears for you. Lawrence, take it away.
Hi, how are you? I'm also happy to be in this anthology with all these other great poets, and thank you, Katie, for including me in that project. It's good to see everyone here. Thank you, Tammy, for hosting this event for us. The poem that's in the Odes and Elegy collection is an ode, and it's an ode to 2 pelicans that I discovered near Port Lavaca, and this is the poem. It's called Toward Karankawa. There are 2 pelicans who love each other and fly outside the rails of the highway every day, spanning Lavaca Bay. They rise in a marriage, I feel, but cannot know, as they wing up under the bridge from below, picking up the strong Gulf wind, turning east to race traffic up Texas Highway 35. Out my passenger window, I see them eye to eye before they dive away over the chop, preparing to take on another car over Lavaca Bay. This is a drawing, I think, there on the share of the pelican.
Oh, nice. Did you do that drawing yourself, Lawrence?
Yes.
Wonderful. Really
Thanks.
wonderful.
And because of the theme for tonight, I'm going to read another poem. It's called Body of Water. Body of water. After I was texting with my daughter this morning about her move to a better apartment in Brooklyn, especially about her cat, whose personality changed so abruptly, for the better too, I began picturing this invisible river flowing between our bodies. And by bodies, I mean my body, your body, her body, animal bodies, all of our bodies. A river with no source other than the bodies it runs through, raising our joys and fears and setting them down inside a body nearby. And sometimes that river is calm and slow. The blue sky is reflecting on its cool, flat surface. And sometimes that river is a flash flood. The rain has been coming down so hard for so long, it will break us open, rushing out of our mouths, our eyes, and every pore.
Wow. Thank you. It just made me think that we're all floating right now in the river of pandemica. I invented a new river. We're all trying to manage ourselves within. Wonderful piece. And oh, I encourage you to do more of those drawings too. I love that very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is Wendy Barker, who is hailing from San Antonio, as far as I remember hearing. And Wendy, are you with us? I would love to invite you to read some poems now.
Thank you so much, Tammy, and thank you, all of you. My goodness, what a joy this is. And again, thanks to Katie for this fantastic anthology, Odes and Elegies. I'm so honored that she chose 3 of my poems to be included. And just thank you all. It's just it's food hearing you all. I'll be very brief about my background. Many of my growing up years were spent in Tucson, which is the reason when I came on the job market after getting my PhD, I chose to come to UTSA, the University of Texas at San Antonio. I fell in love with San Antonio. In a way, it was like coming home to Tucson. No Catalina Mountains, but the demographics were similar. And at least we have some cactus and palo verde trees. And so the landscape drew me. And I've been here since '82 and teaching and partially retired, but still loving the students. So in the interest of time, since you all have such wonderful things to read, I'm just going to read one of the poems in Odes and Elegies. It's not really about water, but I hope it fits. This poem is called Lifted. Lifted. Cardinals, finches, chickadees flock to our feeders. Up to 4,000 feathers on each bird's little body. On a tundra swan, 25,000. Light as a feather, we like to say, as opposed to this too solid flesh or my stiff and creaking joints. But even dry feathers aren't so light. Headdresses Las Vegas showgirls wear will hold 2,000 plumes, weigh 20 pounds. All the rage, feathers, especially for hats in the late 19th century. Women's toques were even topped with stuffed whole birds. In 1886, on the streets of New York, Frank Chapman counted over 40 species of feathers on bonnets, caps, cloches, downbrims. I guess we earthbound humans have always yearned to fly. I'm no Icarus, but oh, how I wish I could transform my flabby arms into wings. Last June, as I stepped onto a Gulf Coast pier, I stopped. 2 yards down on the wooden slats stood a great blue heron. We stared at each other for, I swear, 10 minutes before he opened wide his long wings and, shrieking, flew off to a hill beyond, a sight staying with me wherever I dropped my feet. Sometimes when I'm happy, I'll flap my arms. Just feeling that motion makes me smile. During Brahms' 4th Symphony last night, as I leaned my aching back against the concert hall's padded seat, the violinist's bows rose like feathery quills, and 1,000 listeners sprouted wings.
Let's all unmute ourselves and here's some clapping, and if you want to do some flapping, please do that too. Wonderful work. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
That's Wendy Barker, who you just heard. Yeah, you only gave us one poem, but I know you've published at least 7 full-length volumes of poetry. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe dropping a link in the chat about how people can order some of your books, maybe a publisher's name, something like that. And Katie, I would love for you to add some info also in the chat about how people can get their hands on a copy of this book, which we're celebrating tonight, Odes and Elegies, Eco Poetry from the Texas Gulf Coast. Congratulations to all the poets and to Katie Hirth for wonderful editorship on this project. And I'm hoping the project gets lots of air under its flapping wings. Yeah, feel free to unmute yourselves because we're going to take about a 5-minute break and resume the readings with Sue Prevost up after the break, followed by Tom Woodruff, Terrius Harris, Ann Fisher Worth, Guadalupe Gonzalez Perez, and Josh Catena. So just, a little time to freshen up your drink, run to the ladies' room or whatever you call it, and stretch your legs, and we'll be back in about 3 to 5. Thanks.
I hear some birds.
It sounds like wind, but I'm not sure why. Maybe somebody opened a window. Oh, I'm chewing on some almonds, and I keep thinking I'll start talking after I chew this one, and then I pop another one in my mouth. So I apologize. Everybody all braked up?
Yep.
Drinking kombucha tonight. it's that kind of Saturday. Hope you all are doing well, having a great end of week, and progressing through March, which is Women's History Month. And also, in a few hours, we can say that we've hit spring 2021, which is exciting. I think we'll reach 70 degrees in Fort Worth tomorrow. And I'm hoping to meet in a park, socially distanced, with a few people that I love. So we'll see how that happens. I actually went for a photo shoot a few days ago, and I decided to do some poses with my shoes off. And I was barefoot on the grass in a public park, and it occurred to me I hadn't been barefooted outside in a long time, and it felt really good. And I need to go do that again sometime soon, maybe tomorrow. Thank you all for being here, and we're going to continue on. Really great work is still yet to come. We heard some amazing voices already, and great poetry from Katie, Robin, Loretta, Maria, Lawrence, and Wendy. And we've got Sue, Tom, Terrius, Ann, Guadalupe, and Josh coming up in just mere moments. Donna, do you want to give us a little something about global climate strike?
Let's see. Let's see.
Sorry to put you on the spot. If it's not a good time, we can come back in a little while after Sue, okay? Want to do that?
I just know that people registered actions all over the world.
No,
so all of us can.
I can't hear you.
No, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. I just know that people
Your
registered
subtitles aren't
actions.
working either.
Maybe
What?
YouTube was down.
Barefoot in the park. Yes, indeed, Greg. It felt so nice.
I know that people around the world registered actions online on a website.
Oh gosh, the volume has really
Low. Okay, I'll try later. I'll try later.
We
Okay.
can hear, truly.
Okay, you're fine. Everybody's telling you you're fine. It was me.
Okay. Okay. Let's all go to the website after this at some point tomorrow or whenever you want to, and look on the map and get inspired by all the things that happened, because people registered their actions all over. And Texas is actually planning, not just Texas, but New Mexico, Texas, and Louisiana together, the Permian Gulf Coast Coalition, are planning a week of action in April around Earth Day. So that's Earth Day is on Thursday, the 22nd. And so there's going to be actions on that week. And if you want to do something, whether it's to read another poem toward the ocean, that's how this got started, Tammy. Remember your poet last time? What was his name? He's from the lower Rio Grande Valley.
It was Anthony, the nurse.
The
He's a
nurse
in El Valle.
Yeah.
and Anthony inherited the papers of his, I think, grandfather or granduncle. And this relative of his would go out and read poems to the trees. And Anthony got inspired to go out and read poems to the ocean. So that's how Tammy decided to do what we're doing tonight and have Dando Agua, giving water, with also the political focus around the global climate strike. So really, I'll tell you this. There's a big, strong movement right now to try to not export oil and gas anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Because, yeah, back in the 70s under Nixon, Nixon actually banned oil and gas exports. I don't know if it was so much part of his establishing the Environmental Protection Agency and all the laws that came from that, which is a very good thing. And Earth Day got established. There was a big movement, in the 70s for that, of people demanding that. So that oil export ban was in place until Obama. And then Trump lifted the ban. So now all of those oil and gas companies are rushing to drill and export as much as possible to make money, but that's not good for people or the planet. So there's on that week of Earth Day 2021, the week of April 22nd, there's going to be the announcement of the fossil fuel export ban movement, and and the actions are going to concentrate on that, because all those communities we talked about earlier, from the lower Rio Grande Valley up to where Katie is from in Port Arthur. I lived there in Port Arthur when I was 2 years old, Katie, or when I was 3 years old. So that's going to happen that week, and we're going to really amplify the call for stopping exporting, not exporting anymore, and keep it in the ground is better. And I just want to send out wishes to everyone who's recovering from that terrible winter storm, that I hope that everyone is doing better, and that we also get some money from the federal government to help people who are just trying to get their water going back in their houses. And so the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe, who I posted in the chat, I apologize for posting that during Poets. I don't like that because it's distracting. But they are raising a lot of money, and they've brought truckloads of food and supplies, and they've just worked themselves, so hard to help people recover from that winter storm. So that's in the chat too. You'll see that on their website. So thank you all for the moment to update folks on that stuff. It's good to be with you.
Thank you, Donna. You have so much knowledge about all that advocacy going on. I really appreciate you being here. Speaking of Polar Vortexes 2021, I don't talk too much about my work in the DANDO event, but I will share that I did film myself 3 times giving little reports from my back room closet, which is where I slept for about 3 or 4 nights in a row when it was so cold in this colander in which I live that wasn't very well insulated. So if you're interested in looking at those YouTube videos and having a little laugh, because they're kind of funny now to watch, I can share that in the chat later. But let's move on with our program. Sue Prevost in New Orleans, Louisiana. What you have for us tonight, Sue?
Hey everybody, I'm really, as always, humbled to be here with you, Tammy, and everyone else. Donna, thank you for that great report, and I'm eager to check out the links. So here in Louisiana, we have been dealing with air pollution. So on the Mississippi River, there's 100 miles of back-to-back industrial contaminating plants. So it's odd, because you can't see air pollution. So when I went to Texas a couple of years ago and went to Seadrift, Texas, it was my first experience seeing actual physical nurdles, which are the byproducts of oil and the what Formosa plant eliminates in the Gulf there, in the bay. And to have that reality, to see that tangible pollution really was moving for me. Part of my heart is in Texas. And coincidentally and sadly, about a month ago, the nurdles that I saw in Texas also appeared on the beach of the Mississippi River here in New Orleans. So you probably know that the river creates sometimes with a beach-like place called a batcher, and that's a very beautiful and interesting place where animals live, where your dog can go back and forth. Well, apparently there was a shipwreck of some kind on the river, and those nurdles came here to us. And it's just like, the message is water, you can't separate water. We're all in this together. So even though we're dealing with pipeline issues and oil exportation and all of that, it's hard for folks here to really feel like they're getting anywhere when the plants just keep being built on and on and on. There's like no stopping them. So our biggest fight right now is with Formosa, the same plant that we protested in Seadrift, Texas 2 years ago with Diane Wilson. Same monster is here. So on that note, I'll go ahead and begin my poem, which I wrote it today, and it's just about the different ways people think of the Mississippi. Like people give it certain genders, and assign their own specific, yearnings to this body of water that's so great and massive. And, it comes from up north, Minnesota, Lake Itasca, and it comes all the way down here, and I believe that is almost 4,000 miles of river, and its watershed is 1.2 million miles, of a spanning land. It's amazing. Okay, so, one more thing before I forget. I'm sorry. I wanted to mention right after Katrina, the Dalai Lama was here. And so a lot of us went to go hear him and see what he'd have to say. And one of the things he said was, you people must learn to live with water. In other words, it's not going anywhere. You're really going to have to learn to live with it somehow ebbing and flowing. And at first, and a lot of people were a little ruffled because, they're sort of on survival level, but I'm learning. I'm really learning what he meant. I really understand because my house floods now every time there's a hard rain. And if I'm not there to sweep it out, it's gonna really do some damage. But it's sort of the way I'm approaching it now. It's much calmer. I'm into the acceptance mode of it's just gonna flood. Okay, so I don't have a name for this poem, and but here it goes. The Mississippi, the sinewy force curving her way into being, the ultimate mother of deltaic soil, who changes her mind with an ear to her heart force, but always feeding you. Like the goddess Kali and your grandma, she knows herself, unwilling to be shackled by levees and men, even if it means your own death. Don't cross her. The Mississippi, like Kali, has no hands, reminding us of how chains can lift and how we can flow to the mouth of ourselves. Paul Robeson sings her as an old man keeping silent with slaves and crops all around. Old Man River, that old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. Remember before Cancer Alley when she bathed your sweet body inside her brown water skin? Her veins like yours, never meant for pipelines or poison. She can pull you into her current, keep you whirling until you're flushed beneath her fury, her non-binary godhead encompassing the rivers that become her, from the northern Anishinaabe land to the Homa Choctaw South. Don't pin her down. Thank you. The next one is a lot shorter, just a little ditty, a little bit lighter, sort of. Catfish streams, steamboat calliopes with their full songs lull you to forget the scarred backs of men and women carried to market on the river's soft flesh. Who would be without, who would we be without her leaving us? Going into the world, mixing and mingling, emptying her body into a grander expanse, then returning to us in her communion with rain and runoff, suns and clouds, our chameleon, our artist, newly formed, carrying the future. Thank you.
Ooh, gracias, Sue. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I'd be there with the broom or mop helping you sweep out the floodwaters. Believe me. Yeah.
I love the YouTube videos, Tammy. At first, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, you know, because it was so unexpected. But I
Yeah.
smiled. Thank you
It's
for
fine. It's fine. Yeah, I encourage people to laugh at me. And usually I'm very survivable. So even if it's about hardship and strife, it's fine to laugh. I've got
that.
stories. Next up is Spirit Thomas Woodruff, based in Austin, Texas, but formerly of that big, beautiful island in the ocean, Australia. Welcome, Tom. What do you
Oh,
have
I
for us
dedicate
tonight?
this to the poet of Barton Springs, Susan Bright. You may remember her. And the poet of Jacob's Well and Cypress Creek, Odalisa, who was a poet laureate of Wimberley, in their memory, because they were devoted to the love of water and living with water, not despite. So these are love poems. I asked water why she still stayed with us. Was it not easier to leave for the sun, to evaporate and fall down again, to escape all walls and dams? She licked around my feet, speaking in a liquidity I could barely read. Her words were the slide of fish, her voice the wind on wave. She spoke in a clarity hard to explain. She pointed out that she was constant while we changed. She said that she had depth while we stayed in the shallows afraid. She showed me her varieties, her birthings, and her graves. And I could see why she chose to stay. You see, water is a mirror for our eyes, a way to see the obvious, a laneway through our winding lives. Water rests with us and gets excited. Water swims around us, a constant companion at all times. Without her, we would be bone and dry. With her, we are winged, we fly. And water gets to share with us as we try to understand why anyone would remain a mirror of our changing minds. Because when water talks, she speaks waterfalls, raindrops, storms, hurricanes, waves, tidal and otherwise, lakes, rivers, ponds, dams, and creeks. She speaks liquid syllables, motion, mutation, muse. She refuses to be totally clear. Her depths may not be taken, her surfaces reflecting. When water moves, we watch with wonder. She is more than gravity. She sparkles with luminosity no star can match. In fact, water has a consciousness intact. Separate from, yet twined with ours, we came from her, and to her we will return. This is only one of the lessons we learn. Water is as patient as our seasons, to be delivered as needed as we watch the sullen skies above for signs of change. Water within us, water surrounds us, water in our fields, water in our lakes. Water gives to us, we take. And for World Water Day on Monday, March 22nd, and I'll point out the racism of water, because we don't want black water, brown water, yellow water. We only want fresh water. And there's only 2% of that in the whole planet. So we've got to recycle 100% every drop. So World Water Day, Monday, March 22nd. I swear by the waters of Barton Springs, by the waters of Jacob's Well, by the waters of Blue Hole, Cypress Creek, and Hamilton Pool, by the waters of every spring and well, creek and river, may fresh waters flow forever. Drought has drained our liquidities to the bone. Floods have taken down the trees of Wimberley to destruction. Climate change made Austin boil snow for water. We cannot live without fresh water. Every drop is precious. Rain barrels conserve agua, displacing the need for Nestle plastic bottled waters. Fluoride and chlorine added to our drinking water supplies. Without the flow of waters within, around, and outside, there would be no sense of life. Aqua vita, agua pura, water is life. Thanks for listening.
Cheers, Tom. Thank you. And one more time, World Water Day is
Monday, March 22nd, coming up.
March 22nd, day after tomorrow. What are you doing for World Water Day,
I'm trying
Tom?
not to drink as much, but we used to go down and do poetry and music by Barton Springs until we realized the springs were blessing us. So now I acknowledge with respect that the water is more powerful than us, and that I will just adore from a distance and respect.
Thank you so much. Always glad to have you here with us. Next up, we have Terrius Harris, who made it through the traffic to get back to his computer screen. Terrius is a person that I met in Wisconsin several years ago, and you've been on many whirlwind adventures since that time we met. And if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're working on now, or why you're in Honolulu these days, please feel free to take a little time to tell about that as well. Welcome to the mic, Terrius Harris.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Thank you for the invite to come. I'm very blessed and thankful to be here. I am here in Hawaii. I'm a Native Corps member for Teach for America, which is a subset of Teach for America where Native people can serve in Native communities. And so I chose Hawaii to come and teach high school mathematics. And so I do that now. For today, I was going to read two other poems that are a little bit more private, but I actually thought another one would be more fitting for water. I don't have a lot of poems revolving around water, and that's funny considering I live on an island, and also just the indigeneity perspective of water serving as a way of life or as life. But the poem that I'm reading today was actually from some research I did with Nat Geo in the Galapagos, which surrounds the relationship between the Galapagos giant tortoise and also the Galapagos sea turtle. It's called A Tale of Two Shells, and I don't read my poetry aloud often, so please bear with me. But here we go.
Take your time. Take your time. It's not a race, and yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
Have fun.
A Tale of Two Shells. A place so foreign to the naked eye that travelers will call it fake, unbelievable, undescribable. But in fact, it's just a projection of what things used to be like before mankind's ways. A place untouched, now uncovered to you in a blink of an eye. This is only a glimpse of the magic that lives here on this island of life. An island of endemic creatures, ones not seen anywhere else before, yet two rise above the rest, as through their ancient eyes, we can see the trials and tribulations that Mother Nature has bore. Beginning on the land, we stare into your eyes, with the wrinkles on your face and the scratches on your shell telling no lies. It is you who walked among the dinosaurs in ancient times, head held tall, surviving centuries of natural disasters, and humankind, the largest threat to the environment of them all. We stare upon your long neck, waiting for you to speak, to tell us the answer to our problems, to help us reconciliate our self-created, unfortunate destiny. Looking in your land, untouched you roam, and as we gaze upon your beauty, we find answers previously unknown. The giant Galapagos tortoise, a species almost extinct, but with the careful planning and intentionality of mankind, you still walk among me. It is here we find our lesson. It is here we find our truth, as your very existence is the answer to maintaining mankind's historical youth. For you represent the environment, the land, the trees, even the air we breathe. And just as we saved you, we must act swiftly with intention to save the planet, our home to forever be. You teach us that leaving is not the answer, nor hoping that everything will work out is the plan. Instead, you represent the work, the dedication, and the unwavering effort that must be put in every one man. Leaving the land and diving into the sea, we find our second guardian underneath the waves, swimming gracefully. As you swim away from us, seemingly set on your own journey, with a closer look, we find our second lesson for learning. With a few strokes distance, yet so much space in between, it is hard to gather a closer look at what you're trying to show me. Chasing you in the ocean, a place that makes up more than 70% of our home. As I get closer, I notice something in your movements as you swim. It is not your strong set path that you follow as you roam. Instead, looking closer, I can see the expression on your face, one of peace and acceptance, content, as you are one with this place. A lesson not easily learned, as mankind believes things can all be owned. But instead, the wisdom that you bestow upon us is that we are all of something greater and many times unknown. For you have withstood the unwavering turning tides of time, a lesson that mankind must learn in order to survive. Your lesson is clear as the water you swim through, and it begins with acceptance from all of us, me and you. Acceptance that we are only a small part of the plethora of Mother Earth, and a small dot in the record of time since the universal birth. With this said, we should let the earth guide us as it pushes us towards reconciliation, with warnings like increased tornadoes, hurricanes, drought, and rising tidal basins. Just as you swim, let the tide guide you. We should too learn to make note of Mother Nature's warning if our future is what we want to earn. The Galapagos sea turtle, a species so unique, though others are in existence, I am forever grateful for the lessons that you've taught me. Divided by the land, buried beneath the sea, yet forever connected within the same destiny. Creatures unlike any others in a place never believed to be real. What we should learn is that all we have to do is take note from what we have seen here. Protect our oceans, protect our lands, for this is the only one we can withstand. This is the charge we've been given. This is the only lesson we need to learn. For it was said a long time ago, when mankind thought the world was flat, that we were simply sailing through the universe on a turtle's back. A tale of two shells, one dry, one wet, but both representing the yin and yang of our Mother Earth as we pledge to restore her to the magnificence that the Galapagos has left. Thank you.
Wow. I love that, being a love letter to another species and your fellow traveler. Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terius. Terius, do you have a second poem to share with us?
I do have another one, but I think that'll be, I think that's good for now, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, if that yeah, satiated your appetite, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, and so great to see you. And guess who's up next? Somebody you met out at Black Earth Institute, Ann Fisher-Worth, and she dropped a comment for you in the chat. And Ann Fisher-Worth, I'm ready to hear you, and so are the others. You're based in Oxford, Mississippi, todavía, to this day, I'm assuming, unless you had to move during the pandemic. And you do a lot of incredible stuff, a lot of environment oriented work. You've done great teaching with men in prison and helping to encourage them to cultivate their own literary voices. And if you want to tell us a little bit about what you're working on this year, what your academic teaching year has been like, and the environmental science minor that you direct, go for it. Share as much as you like. Welcome to the mic, Anne.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be brief. You know, I was Terius's teacher. You know that, right?
Oh, I forgot that part. I forgot that part.
And that's how he knew about Black Earth. I recommended him for that. So it's really lovely to see him again now that he's all grown up. And, you know, yeah, I'll tell a great story. Terius was a very good student, except that he was so busy doing so many things all around the world that I finally had to say, you will not pass unless you come to class sometimes, you know, because he was so active already. doing this great stuff here and there and everywhere else, you know. So it's really lovely to see him again. And thank you for having me. So yes, I live in Mississippi. I teach at the University of Mississippi and I direct the environmental studies program there. I'm going to read two poems, and you know, they're kind of different from what people have been reading. I've really enjoyed hearing your work, but being in Mississippi and originally being from California, I'm sort of the odd duck here, maybe. So this first one is from a book that I did in collaboration with Maud Schuyler Clay. She's a beautiful photographer in the Mississippi Delta. And the poem I'm going to read is my sort of homage to the Mississippi River. And it is in answer, it's an ekphrastic book. This is a photograph that she took of a mural in Clarksdale, Mississippi, of the blues singer Robert Johnson shortly after he sold his soul to the devil. And he's lit on fire with inspiration. So this poem is, as I said, kind of my homage to the Mississippi River and to Robert Johnson. There's a little Bob Dylan in here and a little Eudora Welty. He's waiting at the crossroads, dressed in a long black coat and crimson shoes. In his left hand, he carries a willow wand. Waving it, he says, "Come forward," and you do. You are hesitant and shy, yet full of singing. Beyond you, the river shines, the river that swallows the radiant boatmen. Why do you wonder if this is Mr. Death? Because that is what the song says, that only death could offer such transformation. In his pocket, sprigs of lilac and thyme. Sheltered in the crook of his right arm, something you do not see. It is dark, with feathers, a hen, an owl, a mockingbird. He waits for you. Say yes. Beyond him, the water is silver and silver. But how can there be a crossroads where there is water? Which of the roads leads endlessly into the river? And then the other poem is a short poem, California poem. I was there some years ago. I'm from California, and I was at the Jurassic residency a few years ago, right after a drought ended. So this is a poem called Rain. And if you know California, you know that the hills get parched and bare and dry and brown. And then when the rain comes, they instantly freshen and become green again. But I also want to mention, I quote a student that I had long ago named Chuck Fulgham, who had been in the Peace Corps in Ukraine shortly after Chernobyl. And he came back and started graduate school at the University of Mississippi. And within a year, he had bone marrow cancer and he died. So this was just a really heartbreaking thing for everybody. And I was especially fond of him. So it was very wrenching for me. Rain. I have returned to this loft among redwoods in the California mountains. Gradually, the night steadies itself around me. Outside, the tiniest rain begins to heal the desiccate hills. Rain, small, sweet rain, bringing these hills of my childhood back to tenderest green. I have carried so much fear that those I love will suffer, as they will. Pools begin to gather where quail nest in the darkness. I think we are provided for, said my dying friend when I asked him if he sensed what lies beyond pain. So thanks.
Oh, so sorry about your friend, Anne.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And I love the book with the colored plates, the project that you did with the photographer. Do
Yeah.
you giving us the title of that again?
In the chat. Yeah, the title is very complicated. It's called Mississippi. Absolutely.
So great to see and hear you again, Anne. And I hope you're having a great 2021.
Yeah, so far, well, it's really nice that we've had our shots now. And I'll be able to actually invite my students over for a picnic, you know, rather than looking at them in Zoom. We're all excited about that.
Great, great. We've turned a corner, I think. Next up, we have Guadalupe Gonzalez Perez, who is now based in San Antonio, teaching there. And I met you, Lupita, in Fort Worth when you were teaching here. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself, your poetry practice? And si quieres leer dos, hay bastante tiempo.
Okay. Hi, I'm Guadalupe Gonzalez. I'm from the border. I grew up in this dynamic, crossing the border on a daily basis. My family is from Mexico. I was born in Texas, but raised in Mexico. I started writing poetry maybe 10 years ago. And what I'm going to do today, Tammy, if you allow me, is because of the previous experience, my poetry is in Spanish, and I'm a bilingual educator. I'm an ELL, and I'm very proud of it. I'm an English language learner. So a few years ago, I was brave enough to submit my poetry to a poetry festival in the Valley, St. Paul. And that was my first try with a poetry festival. And what I'm going to share with you, it's not common, but it's something that I'm really looking for to do it, to write bilingual poetry and use both languages. My English is really, really simple. I teach pre-K, and my instruction is basically in Spanish, but I support my students in that transition to English. So even though my poetry or this practice that I'm going to share with you today, it's very simple. It has a purpose because I want my students to be engaged into poetry and using both languages to express themselves. So talking about these memories that we have, my poetry, it's a memoir, or it's a memory that I have from the sea, living near the border and close to the Gulf of Mexico. It's something that I wrote about the first, that experience as a child with my father. So it's part of this anthology of St. Paul. I wrote it in Spanish, but I'm going to use my phone because I wanna share with you this practice with a bilingual version of Cuéntame del Mar. Talk to me about the sea. So I'm going to use both languages. I'm going to translanguage. That it's the term that we use now when we refer to both languages. And what am I telling you if you are like experts in language? I'm a teacher. I'm a certified teacher here in Texas, but I went to law school in Mexico. Cuéntame del mar, de esa seguridad serena que te da, de esos momentos llenos de vida y paz. Talk to me about the sea. Talk to me about how it embraces your longing with memoirs. De cómo te abraza con sus recuerdos, de esa primera salida a flote de la mano de papá. Cuéntame del mar, de esos recuerdos, de esos sábados frente al mar. Talk to me about the sea, about those memoirs of those Saturdays facing the sea, from that long road to Mezquital. Cuéntame del mar y de esa imagen viva de tu padre cuando sostenía tu mano y te enseñaba a nadar. Talk to me about the sea, and from that image of your father when he held your hand and taught you to swim. Cuéntame del mar, tu refugio, tu serenidad, tu mejor rincón para procesar, tu fuente de vida, tu abrazo de sol, cuando más lo necesitas para continuar. Tell me about the sea that kisses your forehead with its cold breeze, and the swaying of the waves that always whisper you that everything, good or bad, shall pass. Tell me about the sea. Cuéntame del mar.
Oh, that's so sweet. Very
Gracias.
sweet. Loretta wrote a comment for you, Lupita. She called you a rock star
Gracias.
because you're working with the little young people.
Well, I think that teaching the younger ones is my call, and trying to transmit to them this pride about how we are here to add and how our diversity it's going to help us in this transition that we are living in the States. So that's my purpose, that's my call, you know, to work with them. But also what I try to do is to teach them or to provide them with sources that are going to create in them or to support in them this interest in learning more about our heritage also, because we need to remember always where are we coming from. So I think that that's my purpose. This is what I have planned for you, and I have another one, but it's only in Spanish. It's short.
Oh,
it also has
yeah.
Es en español, ¿sí? It also has like this this image of the turquoise sea. Existes. Existes y tu existencia misma me revela lo mejor de este tiempo. El azul añil de otros días, en medio de notas breves y la calidez de nuestras conversaciones, languidece. Luz de día, luz que opaca cualquier dejo de melancolía. Matiz que iridiscente con el paso de los días crece. Sueño teñido de aguamarinas, sueño de brisa fresca en otoño, de puente que cruzo al dejar atrás distancias y atardeceres de tiempos inclementes, conjunción de voluntades y tiempos, de querencias y afectos. Podremos estar distantes, mas nunca ausentes. And there's always this longing or this saudade, because as being a migrant or being an immigrant, we're always longing, you know, for places, our family, but we are proud to be here. And I'm glad I appreciate, Tammy, that you invite me, especially sharing this time with all of you, that I have a long road to travel or to work on the poetry, but I'm really happy to be here sharing this with you. Muchas gracias, Tammy. Te agradezco. Gracias.
Thank you. And la palabra querencia.
Querencia, it's
significa to desire.
What I use it to talk about the people that I love, the places that I love. Yes.
So you called it
Una
a
querencia, mi querencia, sí.
Oh, okay, okay. A turn of phrase. Okay. Yeah, I have a crush on that word, and I'm trying to learn how it's used. So thank you. I learned another use for it today. Gracias. And I just will take just a few seconds to invite folks who have books or have Instagram, or you want to share how people can get in touch with you or follow you on social media. You can put that also in the chat, so we can, you know, if you feel like, hey, I think I have a poet crush on this person, I want to follow them, go ahead and don't be shy and put your contact info in the chat. And then when you want to leave, before you leave, if you want to save the chat, I can show you how to do that. Basically, at the bottom, of the chat window where it says to everyone. And then there's the word file on the right-hand side. Just to the right of file are the three dots. If you click on the three dots, it says save chat. If you click on save chat, it saves it to your hard drive. So just saying, it's a nice thing to do when you're about to leave a Zoom meeting, because then you get all of the data, all of the information and the links and the, the compliments people wrote for you. You can save that and have it to look at again later. And then the video will also be available later. I'll put it on YouTube, hopefully within a week, but I've got a lot going on right now. So we'll see if you could hold me to that promise. Gracias again, Lupita. Thank you for being here. And last, and from Portland, Oregon, where he's now based, we have Josh Catena. And let me look for your face. There you are. How are you doing, Josh? You ready to close up the night?
Yes, and I'm honored to be here tonight with everyone. This has been a beautiful night of poetry and just so much talent here in this virtual room. Tammy and I go back over 12 years ago or something like that. I'm from Fort Worth originally, and she has nurtured my voice and my poetic giftings. I am so thankful that she and I have reconnected, and we've recently, she's joined, we're creating a creative collective. That's why my name is Radical Roots, because that is the name of our collective that we just brand new, just started. And that's a collective of artists from all different backgrounds who are in different talents, who we have a big focus on social justice and on transforming our communities, but also with transforming ourselves. So just a little bit about me, and I'll wrap up. So I'm a social worker. I've been a social worker for 9 years, and I did 6 years in Texas, and for the state of Texas. And now I work for the state of Washington with kids who are in foster care, and it's very rewarding, but taxing. And I have wanted to bring to light a lot of social issues that I have seen within working within the system, which I think there's a lot of educators here, which and Loretta, you're amazing. I don't know how you're doing it or how you've done it with your cancer diagnoses. So definitely a huge trooper there. But it sounds like we're all, like, in some ways doing our part. And I think that's beautiful. Everything here has just been amazing. So I wrote a book about coming out as gay and leaving Christianity. It's called Break the Violent Fetters, Life Beyond the Closet in the Pulpit. I'll put it in the chat notes and stuff. And I received, thank you. I received a lot of great support at first, but I also received a lot of backlash, of course, for some controversial things for people, but backlash from friends and family. And I felt very isolated for a long time, especially because I moved up to Portland a year before the pandemic, but it's beautiful up here. But anyway, all that to say, I have hidden my creative talent, I have like a following on Instagram, but like just personally, I have not really shared it or even promoted my book because of fear of being judged and having been isolated. My whole goal in writing it was to, I had 40 kids on my caseload throughout my tenure who were LGBTQIA and struggling with their identities and had engaged in self-harm of some sort or wanted to kill themselves. And that was also my story. And I wanted to give people some hope that you could get through it and talk about some of the systemic reasons we are here. That, I'm not necessarily a page turner that everyone wanted to just go by, read that book, but it was there for the people who needed it. And I didn't feel a lot of support. Anyway, okay, I did, but I didn't. Anyway, so Tammy asked me to come on and to read a couple poems, and I'm so honored and I'm so thankful. She's the first person who ever published me. Well, my granddad did, and then Tammy, and in an anthology years and years ago. And it's just, I'm so thankful that we have our connection. So I'm gonna screen share because we live in this beautiful Pacific Northwest up here, and I wrote this. I have 2 poems, but they're not, I don't know. They're not completely finished. I was still kind of they're works in progress. I guess some with writers, you kind of all can relate. But I wanted to show this beautiful waterfall that was up here while I read this poem to you all. Okay. Sorry, there we go. Okay, that's the, sorry, I just gonna have to do this. My bad. I just wanted y'all to see it. So that was my inspiration for this poem. Yesterday, I sat out upon a boulder in a Pacific river with reverent hands clasped together, blessing the glacial torrents at a waterfall I didn't even know existed until then. And there I wept in appreciation for beauty folded into promises of what God must look like. An unconditional love, the earth sends out emissaries, hidden to us all, and yet found on sidewalks, gardens, life, and yet found on sidewalks, gardens of life abound. Here on this magma outcropping, I whisper my fears into the sky with my eyelids closed. What I fear most is not being able to do this, not being able to live this life. I doubt the writer writing these very words within me. For what are words but verses in a Pied Piper's song? Peasants can't return me to who I used to be. That person can no longer be held back by dams and limitations. And though I have been so alone for 3 years, it hurts less than when I was trapped in fear, than before I stepped out of the potter's wheel to become marble made of my own future, to become a new creation and the evolution of all things. But here before me, waterfalls gush outwards like secrets, pouring from the pockets of a child, fixed within a granite window in time. The millions of years she stood out here and abandoned. What if water had waited for millennia just for someone to see it falling here right now? I sat upon a boulder cleansed within a cove, trillions of atoms bursting in the essence of life, a boundless rejuvenation, a reclamation of spirit. Real resurrections aren't pleasures doled out at roadside attractions or pithy Sunday services of pomp. Find yourself diving myriad of depths within your portal soul, letting flow the soul honey like 100-year-old trees above. The pine sap heart is worthy to be received by joy, bright kisses from 1,000 loves. Inside your great gaping cavern, the sunlight glints on seas of many waters and unknown blessings to come. Your life is here, right now, just waiting to show that even in your breakings, we were always made to glow.
Unmute for that one, y'all. Unmute for this one. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Can't
It's
be held back by dams.
thank y'all. It's an honor to speak any of these words to y'all. And I have one more. Is that okay, Tammy? We got time? Okay. And I don't have titles to these songs yet, or poems. I was sitting on that boulder when I also wrote this one. I don't think it's finished yet anyway. Go into the heart of all creation. Sit within that moment and be made whole. Let your heart spill open, broken in salt water. Skin is stung with saline. Hearts are ports of weeping. Does the ocean keeping in her grief like a mother, hidden in waves? We bring our past and failings with us, like a beggar, trawling eons of sand. Roll your primordial tears back and forth for years and years no longer. Unlatch your hope unto the sunbeams like a sister protecting her brother flame. I want to live in sun-drenched freedom like nude bathers awaken to their divinity, swimming to a home along the horizon. Set free your wounds into the wild, fling ivory towers made in madness and of granite. In each moment of jagged breaking, a new door is being opened, another path unlocked, unsheathed, and unshielded from ourselves. We are water in waves looped forward, gushed upwards and crashed into the back of cliffs planted in seas, blessed from the curse of memories. All must swing through that mortal coil, and out we must also go. Stretch your heart beyond its breaking, like resin from the snow. What's been aching at the sinews will come out in the flow.
Mm. Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, nice, nice.
So
I don't think you should ever leave that boulder,
Looking at
Josh.
the sinews
I
will
think that's
come
your
out.
boulder.
Yeah, that's
That's your spot, Josh, that boulder.
I guess you're right. Wow. Thanks y'all so much for listening. I appreciate it. It's an honor. I'm going back to my spot tomorrow with Tammy. See what happens.
Do you mind sharing the link to your book? I know it's available via Amazon. If you're interested, please, I invite you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I'll have to figure out how to do that real quick, and I'll put it in. But it's linked on my Instagram, so I'll put that on there too.
Okay.
I'm excited to get to know all y'all.
Yes, there's a world of us out here writing and sitting on boulders and crying and not being clammed up while we look at clams, I guess. um, Donna's laughing. There's a poet in the room who has been a very quiet listener and audience member for over 2 hours now. And Greg has asked if he could read one poem. Is that all right? If we let him read a poem, Greg Johnson.
I got to see all the thumbs up.
All right.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Tammy. This is a piece of the early submerged chair. This reminded me of a piece, so I went and scrambled to get it. It's called Tire Marks. Out, escape from tire marks, I know so well. Respite from city sound. I announce my flight so they can find my body decked with flies, prostrate on the ground. Tired of impositions from outside, choking, smothering landscapes. I move beyond this realm of smoke to find places my forefathers knew, and foremothers for that matter. Wild onions and lamb's quarter bob their heads from winds which visit them, the congregation of the greens. Here from dark soil gifts of nature grew. Squirrels stare and give out anxious looks at 1-2 legs their mamas warned about. Their leisure gone, I smile while moving on to find a clearing for my nap. Brush and land give way to water, there on edge where wet meets dry. I spit, the sight of plastic cups and wrappers lying in comfort on the water's lap. That's it. That's a chair piece.
Snap, snap. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for indulging me.
Thanks for blessing us.
Oh, Brian. Appreciate it.
So there you have it for first timers to a Dando poetry program. We fill up the 2 hours, lots of surprises, lots of spontaneity, and generous audience members and listeners and observers. Just giving freely of their impressions and how moved they are to hear the work. And next month, we'll be meeting again. I know it's National Poetry Month, and I've yet to figure out what the theme will be, but I welcome you to come back as a listener. The general tone of doing repetitions is that I ask that poets take a month off before reading again in order to leave spaces for new poets to come in and perform. And if you have a suggestion for someone who's an up-and-coming poet or a well-known, beloved, much published poet that might enjoy this space, feel free to send me an email. Just let me know how I can get in touch with them so I can invite them directly. I just really appreciate you. I really look forward to these evenings. They've kept me a sense of community, in the face of the pandemic and the silence and the isolation. I feel very embraced being here in this virtual space. It's very satisfying. Thanks again to Katie Hirth for the wonderful anthology that we're celebrating tonight. And I can almost see you blushing, Katie. And I know you've done this kind of work before, but I have a feeling this particular gem is really going to get a lot of mileage, and I hope that it does. Thank you to all the poets from the anthology who read tonight: Robin Davidson, Loretta Diane Walker, Maria Miranda Maloney, Lawrence Musgrove, and Wendy Barker. I'm sorry that Stephen Schneider couldn't also be with us tonight, but I do appreciate those of you who were able to be here to represent the book. And I'm sure you've all shared a lot of information in the chat. I can't wait to save that and look at it again. And just a reminder that the video will be up on YouTube, and I will share that in the Facebook event page so that you'll know the link for that. Some of us stick around just to chit chat. You're welcome to do that, because it's kind of a sad and lonely thing for me to just say goodbye and then have everybody zipped away from my screen. So I'm going to be here, and I might take off my hat because I was having a bad hair day. So I might let it all hang out. And I am now going to, in a few seconds, I'm going to stop the recording, but I did share a slide earlier, and I'll share it one more time because it's important to me to have this presented to folks. Rise Against Asian Violence. And I hope that we're doing, however each of us can, our best to present some sense of safety and a confirmation of people's right to be here in the US, on the planet, as fellow human beings, sentient creatures as we are together. So that's all I'll say about that. And thank you so much for being loving and caring and compassionate people. My favorite poets usually are all of those things. Peace out. Thank you.
Thank you.